Marshall Klarfeld, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Russell. Good to be with you again.
Marshall Klarfeld graduated with an engineering degree from Caltech in 1951 after studying under Nobel laureate professors Richard Feynman and Linus Pauling. Fascinated by what he considered advanced scientific knowledge in the Bible story of creation, Klarfeld embarked on a quest to unravel the mysteries surrounding humanity's early history. Marshall has written 4 books: Adam the Missing Link, Gilgamesh 10, The Anunnaki Were Here, and his newest book, The Mysteries of Alien Technology. Marshall has made many appearances on radio, including 11 appearances on Coast to Coast AM. He has also appeared on the History Channel's popular TV series Ancient Aliens. You can learn more about Marshall Klarfeld by visiting adamthemissinglink.com. Marshall, just to get everyone up to speed, for those who may not know, who or what are the Anunnaki?
Okay, according to the vast database that Zecharia Sitchin translated from the Sumerian cuneiform tablets and the cylinder seals and the Bible, the Anunnaki were a space-age civilization who from heaven to earth came. If you recall in the Bible, Genesis 6:4 said that the Nephilim were upon the earth in those days. They were the sons of gods, and they coveted the daughters of man. They had intercourse with them and created the giants of old, the men of renown. Now, the Nephilim has never really been explained. It's mentioned once in the Bible. But in the database that Zecharia translated from the cuneiform tablets and the cylinder seals, this was a space-age civilization that colonized planet Earth over 400,000 years ago. I think it's a well-accepted theory now. There have been many naysayers, Russell, which we will always have those. But I think it's hard not to put all the pieces together and connect the dots. There are physical things on this planet that could not have been constructed by Stone Age civilizations of the time frame when they were built. The pyramids, for example, Stonehenge. There are many, many other structures around the planet that are so sophisticated in design that they bear the mark of an advanced civilization that built them. And I think the proof is overwhelming that this civilization existed. In my books, I've put pictures of the things that were done and tried to explain the technology that was used. They were excellent stone craftsmen. They could take stone and make almost anything out of it. And the fact that they put things together without mortar, they put the stone structures together without mortar, is a classic design work.
Such as the Great Pyramid?
Not only the Great Pyramid, but almost every major structure that's still standing that's 2,000 years old. Roman aqueducts, the Colosseum, the Pantheon, the Parthenon. These structures are all put together without mortar. They're stones perfectly cut and fitted together that are still standing. And you ask yourself, well, wow, how's that possible? Our stuff doesn't last that long. We build and tear down, build and tear down. But we use materials like steel and reinforced concrete. They didn't have those tools. They just had what was available. And the constructions were proof of advanced technology. There's just no denying it. You can't walk away from it, Russell.
You were on my show in November of 2013. Have you learned any new information about the Anunnaki since then?
Oh yeah. That was before I wrote the 4th book. And the 4th book, I discovered that my washboard gold mining theory, which you and I talked about on that show, I didn't have a way how they picked up the gold. I hadn't figured out a system of how the gold was collected when it banged down onto the washboard steps of the step pyramids. I've discovered that there was a famous fable called Jason and the Golden Fleece. There's a statue in Sochi, Russia, of Princess Medea holding up a sheepskin that's filled with gold. And the way that happened was that they would drag sheepskin in placer rivers, river waters that are filled with placer gold, and the particles of gold would collect on the sheepskin. And they dry it out, and then they had their gold. So I put two and two together, and I said they were using sheepskin. And I said, well, if sheepskin was the collection system, they needed millions and millions of sheep. And I noticed that a guy like Michael Tillinger has discovered a bunch of stone circles in Southeast Africa. Well, I expanded the search. I found the same stone circles in Syria and in Peru. And I found out that these are called sheepfolds. In ancient times, when they didn't have a bunch of shepherds, you could build a bunch of circles of stone and you'd graze your sheep. You didn't need to have a shepherd there. So if this system was, the Anunnaki had a system of collecting gold using sheepskin, they needed millions and millions of sheep. They built millions and millions of stone sheepfolds and raised the sheep. And that kind of reinforces how they picked up the gold. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but couldn't they have made a synthetic wool without having to slaughter, or rather shear real sheep?
Well, yeah, sure, but why do that when you have a natural product? In other words, they used what was here. And what was here naturally was stone, and there was sheep, and there was gold. In order to collect the gold, they had to pass the placer water over a terrace structure like a washboard. And when the gold banged out on the surface, it had to be collected. And the collection system I'm declaring were sheepskin.
What was the great importance of gold to the Anunnaki?
Well, they said in their stories that they told us on the cuneiform tablets that they needed gold to seal an ozone leak in their atmosphere. Their planet has a 3,600-year orbit around our sun, and they punched a hole in their atmosphere, and they needed to close it up. And the only thing that they found that worked were very fine particles of gold that they could flake up there and have it reflect the sun out and heal the ozone leak. That's the story they gave us. Whether that's the true reason, we don't know, but everybody agrees that they came to this planet because we had the gold and they didn't.
But how does anyone know that these ancient Sumerian texts weren't simply works of fiction?
Nobody knows that for sure, Russell, and it could be that the victors always write this history the way they want it to sound. And these are the only guys around that were smart enough that they taught us how to write and read. I would say they were telling stories that they wanted us to believe, and that's what they wanted us to believe. Now, here's an interesting thing I've been working on recently, Russell. Is there really a need for us to be a civilized people? For instance, why aren't we all just Stone Age? We don't need high-rise buildings. We don't need all the fancy words and art and literature and music. And the Sumerians are an interesting civilization. They were the first complete civilization that appears about 6,000 years ago, and they wrote that everything they had was given to them by the Anunnaki. In other words, if you were an Aboriginal and you just were living hand to mouth like the Stone Age creatures, why would you want to build a civilization? There's really no reason for you to do that unless somebody gave you that form. And I think it appears that the Anunnaki gave to the Sumerians the wheel, written language, philosophy, mathematics, music, art, religion, all the basis high-rise buildings. There's no really need for a high-rise building. So you have to ask yourself the question, if like several of the tribes around the world today that we've discovered that have been untouched are still Stone Age people. They've never evolved out of the Stone Age until we introduced to them the features that would give them that civilization. And if you ask yourself, well, why are we here and how did we get here? It had to be with help. There's no way without some outside introduction of technology that we would have progressed beyond Stone Age. I believe that the testimony of the fact that we're here and this is what we're doing can be attributed to the fact that it was given to us by an advanced civilization like the Anunnaki. Just as we do when we discover Aboriginal tribes that have never had outside influences on them. I know that the original bicameral experiment that produced Homo sapiens, in other words, if you look at the tree of human life, the species on this planet just before Homo sapiens was called Homo erectus. Homo erectus had evolved for 1,800,000 years, was a creature that couldn't speak, and it had a third our brain size, and the only tools that they had developed were wooden spears and stones. Now, 200,000 years ago in Southeast Africa, a new species appears called Homo sapiens. And there are no skeletal remains between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens that prove that we evolved from Homo erectus. So you got to ask yourself the question, where did Homo sapiens come from? And they give us the answer. In other words, in their translations and in the writings in the cuneiform tablets, they tell exactly the method that they used. And what they said they did was they took the egg of the Homo erectus female, they scooped out the nucleus, and they put their DNA in there, and they planted that egg in one of their birth mothers. And that's how they produced Adam.
Can you believe in the writings of the Bible and Zecharia Sitchin without contradiction?
Yes. Yes, he was a biblical scholar, and he was able to show the correlation between the translation and the cuneiform text. That's what's so brilliant about that guy. He was, I studied under him for 10 years, and we would have many discussions, and his brilliance astounded me to how he could pick dates and times in the Bible and correlate them to events that were written in the cuneiform tablets by the Anunnaki and tie it all together. And it's most of the stories that are in the Bible, like the flood story, Noah, come from the cuneiform stories first. They predate the Bible by 1,000 years. And if you read my second book called Gilgamesh 10, it tells what was supposedly the true story of what happened at the flood. And here's another question, Russell, you got to ask yourself. There have been extinction moments in history that have wiped out the dinosaurs, for instance, 66 million years ago. And what came after? Well, there was an extinction of all surface life 11,500 years ago when this flood occurred. If there were any surviving Homo sapiens, how could they survive without help? Where would they get their food? Where would they get their animals? Where would they get their basis to survive? They had to have outside help. So, if what they say happened, we all share the same DNA. In other words, we're all products, we're kind of a bicameral species. We're part Homo erectus and part Anunnaki. So that the species Homo sapiens sapien is very special, and it came out of nowhere, and there's no evolutionary track that you can show how we became what we are from some previous ancestor here on the planet Earth. There is no connection. There's a missing link. That's why I call my first book Adam the Missing Link. Because Adam was the first created Homo sapien. Adam and Eve were sterile because they were created that way. They couldn't reproduce. It's like crossing a donkey with a horse. You get a mule, and mules cannot reproduce themselves. So Adam and Eve were sterile, and there had to be some kind of an experiment done to make Eve fertile so that we could reproduce ourselves. And that's where the story of Adam's rib, I think, comes in the Bible. But anyway, it all fits together for me. I have no doubts in my mind today, Russell, that what Sitchin translated makes sense, and it couldn't have happened any other way, because I can't think of another set of circumstances that would have produced an intelligent species like you and I from where we were. This is a very small, short period of time. Can you imagine a species 200,000 years old, which is in the evolutionary scale a speck of nothing, and we're walking on the moon? Where did we generate all those tools? How did we generate all those tools necessary to take ourselves from Stone Age to a space age in less than 200,000 years? That just doesn't happen. There had to be some outside intervention to make that possible.
In our last interview, you said you believe the Anunnaki are still here, somewhere in Antarctica. Do you believe in the hollow earth theory, which poses there are entry points at either poles which lead into the inner earth?
I've found no proof of that, Russell, but I do believe it's possible that there are pockets of under the Antarctic ice shelf. Could be a Shangri-La, like the Nazis said they'd found a Shangri-La down there. And I do believe that the influence on the planet is still being affected by the Anunnaki. I believe that the advanced technology that the Germans got in World War II came from an advanced species.
Actually, that leads to an audience question here. If the Anunnaki were helping the Nazis, why didn't Hitler win? Good question.
Good question, yeah. The timing was off. We got the bomb.
Wouldn't the Anunnaki, I mean, if they're able to travel through time and space or whatnot, wouldn't they not have that kind of technology?
Yeah, but they love to play games with us. They love to see us fight each other. And they were still in control. They still had the master technology that we still don't have. If they're still here, or if they're going to come back shortly, we will see an advanced technology that we've never seen before.
Another member of the audience here asks, why all this secrecy? Admiral Byrd met with some out-of-this-world resistance back in 1947. Don't we have a right to know the truth?
I've tried to uncover his records, his logs, and his books of what happened down there in Antarctica in February of 1947, when he turned around and came home with his tail between his legs with a bunch of casualties. And the government has covered it up. There's a super need on the part of the government not to let us know what happened. I can't explain it, but it's there.
Another audience question, are the Anunnaki and the Pleiadians the same?
I don't think so. I think the question is, are there other advanced societies or species, civilizations other than the Anunnaki? I say, yeah. There is no proof that I have that the Pleiadians exist. I have proof that the Anunnaki exist. There are maybe dozens of other space-age civilizations, but the only ones that I have absolute proof of are the Anunnaki. The information on the Pleiadians all comes from channeling, and I don't really trust channeling.
But you do see the universe as sort of a Star Trek model where there are different civilizations.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think that we're alone, and I don't think that it's a good question people ask me often, Russell, is where did the Anunnaki come from? Who created them? And they had a deity. Their deity is called the creator of all. And if they're a civilization, say, is 1 million years more advanced than we are, and they came across the same questions, who created the universe and where did the universe come from, and they don't know the answer. Did I ever tell you that I asked Linus Pauling if he believed in God, and he gave me? He said, Klarfeld, our discipline is to explain everything that's going on in the universe back to the beginning, the Big Bang. If you were to ask me what there was a millisecond before the Big Bang, we don't know. If you want to believe in a God, please do, because we don't know how the universe was created. So the Anunnaki must have run into that same question, and they have a deity that they call the deity, the creator of all.
Well, there are limits to what science is prepared to answer. How do you take the word pseudoscience? How do you feel about that word in relationship to the Anunnaki? Is that an insult?
Yeah. I think there's overwhelming evidence. I've written 4 books. Other people have written hundreds of books. And I think each one proves that there is this particular extraterrestrial species called the Anunnaki is referred to by all those authors. The evidence is overwhelming.
You said you have proof of the Anunnaki. Do you have any physical proof? Anything other than anecdotal?
Well, there's cylinder seals, yeah. The cylinder seals are a magnificent, printing press device. It's made out of stone, exquisitely carved in the negative, and it's hard as steel. And when you roll it on wet clay, you get a positive image, and they have self-portraits are what they look like. They showed us what they look like. And people ask me, do we look like them or do they look like us? I say, no, we look like them. They are our parents.
So they don't look like reptilians?
No.
Who controls the world or the elite of the world? Is it the Anunnaki?
I believe so. They've always had a power structure. The first thing they use when you have a small group of advanced people who are trying to control a mass of people that are not as smart as they are, you use kingship first, then you use religion. These are 2 controlling mechanisms, and we have it in spades. I think we are still, the majority of the world are subservient.
Another question from the audience. There's so many here today. Ask Marshall about the Anunnaki eating monoatomic gold powder so they could live for thousands of years. I have read that they made the powder into cakes and ate it for super long lifespans.
It's very possible. I asked that question to Sitchin. I said, they were here for 200,000 years before they created us to help them get the gold. What were they doing with all that gold? They didn't need that much gold to seal the atmosphere on their planet. They must have been maybe ingesting it by monatomic gold. He said, Klarfeld, the record speaks for itself. He would not go, Russell, beyond what the translations that he had written said. He never speculated. I'm a guy who goes outside the box. I also asked him if the story of the mutiny in the mines was a spin to give them cover for creating us. That's the way my mind works. He said no. He said there's no record of that.
Did you and Sitchin ever disagree?
No, he was my teacher. I would come up with these wild ideas, and he'd put me back in my place.
What do you think he would make of the books that you've written now?
I'd love to have him, to share with him what I've discovered, because I think he would smile and say, "Good job."
Is global warming, and this idea was touched upon in the movie Signs, perhaps a result of Anunnaki terraforming?
I doubt it.
Well, did they not ruin the atmosphere of their own planet?
Yeah, well, we are too. Well, we're doing that to ourselves. It's not that they. There's a story in Gilgamesh 10, very significant. I think philosophical, but perhaps true statement that when Enlil, who discovered Noah had survived, that there were survivors, and he accused his brother Enki of breaking his oath. He said, "No, brother, it wasn't me. It was the Creator of all who said that our destiny was to come to planet Earth to create humans, and the humans' destiny was to inherit the planet, take care of it. We're not doing a very good job." They believed in destiny. They were interesting personalities when it came to the future and the past. In fact, Sitchin always said that the past is the future and the future is the past, and that it all goes in cycles, it tends to repeat itself. They would not purposely interfere with destiny. Destiny was something that was going to happen. It was going to happen. I'll give you an example. The destiny of the planet Earth is to be consumed by the sun. When the sun goes supernova, it's going to burn up the Earth. Well, there's no way you can change that. That's destiny. So if you understand that, you don't mess around with it. You find other ways.
I was always aware of that fact, by the way. I learned about that when I was a young kid, and it always bugged me. And I thought, well, we have to find a way to get out of this solar system before that happens, right?
Well, that's it. See, our destiny, I think, it's just me, is to become a super space age species and find Earth too, so that we can continue on.
Absolutely. Become a Type 1 or a Type 2 civilization, as Michio Kaku would put it. Here's an interesting question by an audience member. Does the destruction of Sumerian antiquity by ISIS have any correlation with the increased public awareness of the Anunnaki?
I don't think so. I think that just a group of, I really think that there's evil in, every species has evil. The Anunnaki had evil in their species. They weren't all good. Don't let anybody tell you that they were all good. They weren't. Enki's firstborn son, Marduk, was a bad seed. He's caused more trouble on our planet than you can possibly imagine. And his son, Nabu, is also evil. So you've got to deal with this.
Someone just asked here, is Lucifer the same entity as the Anunnaki's Enki?
No, Enki was not Lucifer. I think Marduk would be closer to Lucifer. Enki's son, see, Enki's firstborn son, Marduk, was a bad seed. Enki saved us once at the flood. If it wasn't for him and the instructions he got from the Creator of all how to do it, which is the story of Noah and the Ark. This is explained in Gilgamesh 10. People want to read that. It makes sense that he might be interested in saving us again. He's the good guy.
Your newest book is The Mysteries of Alien Technology. Is there any common technology that we're using now that you would attribute to it being alien technology?
Yes, sure. You realize that the Colosseum was built on a lake bed? Noah had a lake. Nero had a lake. And when he went, they drained the lake and they built the Colosseum on there. But you can't build a Colosseum on a mushy lake bed, so they put a floating foundation under it. They put a foundation below the Colosseum, which was a donut-shaped foundation that went 42 feet down. It was 110 feet wide, donut-shaped, and it kept the Colosseum afloat during earthquakes and bad situations. And we learned from that how to build buildings in earthquake areas with floating foundations. So it's one of my discoveries in the fourth book, and I show it, was that not only did they have a floating foundation under the Colosseum, but they also had stones that were clamped together with metal clamps. The vertical columns of the archways and so forth had over 300 tons of metal clamps holding it and reinforcing it. So 2,000 years ago, somebody knew how to build a structure that was earthquake survivable for 2,000 years. It's amazing. I mean, I show pictures of how it was done and describe the technology. The architect who figured that out was way advanced. We just learned about floating foundations 80, 90 years ago.
I have another question here. It's an attack on Zecharia Sitchin. Arizona Wilder MK Ultra victim alleges Sitchin was present at satanic ritual abuse ceremonies. He is a pro-Israeli disinfo agent. Sitchin's degree was first and foremost to his oath of the Knights of Malta, of which there is still a picture on the internet. Any comment to this?
Yeah, that's a bunch of garbage. There are Sitchin haters, Sitchin debunkers, who will try anything to destroy the reputation of a great man. I think he deserves a Nobel Prize for what he did, Russell. He opened our eyes to where we came from. Nobody had done that before. And, of course, there's going to be people attacking him for that reason. But, no, that's a bunch of garbage.
Another one here is that he was connected to the Rothschilds. He attended the London School of Economics right along with George Soros. Lord Rothschild is an instructor at the London School of Economics.
That's just a bunch of associations that aren't true and that are designed to cast dispersions on his work. See, the reason why some people can't accept Sitchin's brilliance is because he came out of nowhere. It's kind of like Einstein. You know, Einstein was a clerk in the patent office when he wrote his papers, on relativity, and nobody knew who the hell he was. And all of a sudden, onto the scene comes this brilliant idea from a guy who's a clerk in a Swiss patent office. Well, I believe that brilliance is often given to certain individuals through intelligent hard work, and he was a hard worker. He was a biblical scholar. He could read the original Hebrew, and he could correlate the stories in the Bible with the stories in the cuneiform tablets, and he could decipher the cosmology that the Anunnaki left us about how our solar system was formed. And in his first book, it's a brilliant book called The 12th Planet. He goes into great detail to explain our solar system and how it took shape. And more is being proven today that he's correct. That there was a collision. People at first said there was no collision with Earth. And, all the things that he said are coming to pass are true.
Have you heard of Dr. Mike Hauser?
Yeah, sure. He's the worst of them.
I'll read an excerpt as an open letter to Sitchin. Of course, Sitchin's passed away now. Very simply, the ancient Mesopotamians compiled their own dictionaries. We have them, and they have been published since the mid-20th century. The words Mr. Sitchin tells us refer to rocket ships have no such meanings according to the ancient Mesopotamians themselves. Likewise, when Mr. Sitchin tells readers things like the Sumerians believed there were 12 planets, the Anunnaki were space travelers, Nibiru was the supposed 12th planet, etc., he is simply fabricating data. It isn't a question of how he translates texts. The issue is that these ideas don't exist in any cuneiform text at all.
That's not true. I mean, he can say whatever he wants to say, but there are other scholars, other translators who've come to the same conclusion that Sitchin did. So Dr. Heiser can go, keep saying what he's saying, but it's just not true. And I will defend Sitchin with every breath I have. He's absolutely discovered something worth a Nobel Prize. And all my life I've been looking for the answers that he provided me with. Are we alone in the universe? Where did we come from? And why are we here?
Some of the audience seem to wonder if there's going to be an invasion by the Anunnaki.
No, there won't be an invasion by the Anunnaki. People seem to tend to believe that the only time the Anunnaki can return to this area is when Nibiru comes back, and that's not true. They existed here for hundreds of thousands of years living on their mothership. And when they left the area, they took the mothership with them, and they could be hanging out, for instance, around Mercury, which is nearby, and come back anytime they want. And my belief, Russell, is they saved us once. Enki saved us once, and if we are their sort of children, and he believes that we're worth saving, then we get in big trouble. He's going to come back and help again. And they're capable of doing that. There's been stories of silos that have been deactivated by UFOs.
Here's another one. The Anu are not your friends. In fact, this reality is a prison they created for us. This reality is in fact a holographic projection currently being played out in our minds. The Anu keep our real bodies in a sort of sleep state and our consciousness entrapped in this holographic reality in a state of heightened emotion, generally by some sort of fear, as it creates the highest emotional content they can harvest.
Is that a question?
I don't know. It's sort of a comment, I guess. Perhaps we're living in some sort of matrix reality. This all just speaks to the misconceptions that people have.
Those are people searching for answers. And I found my core. I'm happy with the story that I have. I'm not a preacher, Russell. I'm a reporter. I'm reporting what I found. I'm reporting what Sitchin found. And Sitchin always said he was a reporter. He was just reporting what he found in the translations. I put out some YouTubes. If folks want to go to my YouTube page, they can just go to YouTube and type my name in, and you'll see several short films that I made. One of them was on Atlantis, and one of them was on landing platform, and various parts of the story I've encapsulated in short YouTube forms, which, like, what do the Nazca lines represent? I call them a time capsule. I think the Anunnaki left us a time capsule there. So there's information on the internet on my ideas and stuff that I didn't publish in my books, but I produced on my YouTube page would help people. I think if they go to my website, by the way, my books are available at adamthemissinglink.com for the best value around. Amazon has them at about twice the price. And you can get them on Kindle, and they're available on ebooks. But that's all on my second page of my website, and it explains what they are. And I think people will enjoy gathering them together and getting the information. By the way, I'm going to be appearing in person May the 29th at Joshua Tree, California. There's a conference called Contact in the Desert. And I will be giving a lecture, a workshop, and a panel with George Norrie. And Giorgio and Eric von Daniken will be on that panel. So we're going to have a lot of fun up there. It's a 3-day session. You can go on the internet, just type in "contact in the desert," and it'll come up and show you how to get there. So we invite everybody to come join us. It's lots of fun.
The audience seems to be pretty interested in the gold itself and why they needed to mine gold here on Earth. Many are saying, they could have created their own gold.
No, you can't create gold. That's the alchemy problem. Everybody from the beginning of time has tried to turn things into gold. You don't. The gold is there. You have to collect it. And by the way, I'm going to be launching a product called the Golden Fleece Kit, where you can have this device that you can drag in the water. If you find a placer stream at the spring runoff, you put your sheepskin in this sled, drag it in the water, and you'll collect your own gold.
Have you tried this already? Has it worked?
Yeah, sure.
And you'll be selling these on your website?
Yes, shortly. I'm going to launch it on eBay first, and then I'll put it on my website, and I'll have them available up at Joshua Tree.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun panning for gold or
yeah, well, it's $1,200 an ounce, so.
Marshall Klarfeld, once again, the website is adamthemissinglink.com. You can check out his books there. They're at a reduced price. Marshall, thank you so much for being on the program today.
You're quite welcome, Russell. Thank you for the interview.